I used to think I had the perfect life. I was married to Katie, a woman who lit up every room she walked into. We met in college where she was the life of the party, always the center of attention. I was drawn to her charisma, her laughter, and the way she made everything seem fun. We built a life together, filled with late-night laughter, weekend adventures, and dreams for the future. But as time went on, things started to shift. The laughter faded, replaced by a strange distance. It started with little things, her late nights, the sudden obsession with going out with her friends. At first, I shrugged it off. Katie had always been social, and I loved that about her, but then it became more frequent. She would come home after midnight reeking of cheap cologne, not her usual perfume. I'd ask her about it, and she'd brush it off with a laugh. "Oh, we were just dancing, you know how it is." But the laughter felt forced, and I began to notice a change in her demeanor. She became more secretive, her phone constantly buzzing. The intimacy we once shared started to disappear, and our conversations felt more like interrogations. My gut was churning with suspicion, and I found myself trying to piece it all together. I didn't want to believe it, but denial was getting harder to maintain. Then one fateful night, everything changed. It was a Friday, and I was home while Katie was out with her friends, or so she said. I was scrolling through social media when I came across a photo that knocked the wind out of me. A picture of her, dancing with a DJ at a local bar, an arm slung around her waist as they laughed together. The DJ was someone I recognized, Chris, a guy from our town who had a reputation for being a bit of a player. My heart sank as I stared at the screen, anger bubbling under the surface. I felt a mix of rage and betrayal that I had never experienced before. I was determined to confront her. I waited up that night, packing the living room, my mind racing with thoughts of what I would say. When she walked in, her cheeks flushed and hair disheveled, I didn't hold back. "Who the hell is Chris?" I demanded. She froze, her expression shifting from surprise to something else, fear maybe. "What do you mean?" She stammered, feigning innocence, but I wasn't in the mood for games. I showed her the photo, the anger boiling over as I accused her of cheating. Katie's reaction was staggering. She went from defensive to emotional in an instant. "It's not what it looks like. We were just having fun." She cried, tears streaming down her cheeks, but an insidious bitterness bubbled within me. I realized how well she could lie, how easily she manipulated the truth. The excuses flowed like water, and I couldn't help but feel like a fool for doubting myself for so long. I wanted to scream, to throw her out, but instead I fell into a numbing silence. The emotional impact hit hard. I felt a crushing weight on my chest, a profound sadness mixed with a blinding anger that coursed through my veins. How could she do this to me? How could she betray everything we had built together? I was devastated, lost in a whirlwind of emotions as I listened to her pathetic attempts to justify her actions. Over the next few days, I was a walking ghost. I went to work, spoke to friends, and smiled when necessary, but inside I was unraveling. The pain of betrayal gnawed at me, eating away at my sense of security and self-worth. I replayed the moments we shared, the intimacy we once had, and I felt like I was drowning in a sea of memories that had turned bitter. Was it worth trying to save my marriage? I asked myself this constantly. Did I want to fight for someone who had so easily thrown away our love? As I navigated the tumultuous waters of my emotions, I began to formulate a plan, not one to save our marriage, but one that would empower me to take back control of my life. I knew I had to confront the situation head-on, not as a victim, but as a man who had a right to stand up for himself. The tangled mess of love and betrayal propelled me to action, and I decided it was time to reclaim my narrative. I was done being the passive spouse. I would become the life of the party just like Katie once was, and this time I would be the one calling the shots. As I prepared to turn the tables, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. I would not let this define me. I would take the pain and transform it into something powerful. The DJ may have stolen my wife's attention, but I was about to become the master of my own life. The beat of my life was about to drop, and I was ready to dance to a new rhythm. I took a deep breath and steeled myself for what was to come. The days following the confrontation felt like an endless loop of heartache and confusion. I was living in a house that felt more like a prison than a home. Katie's excuses rolled off her tongue as easily as her laughter once did, and I was growing increasingly tired of the charade. It was as if she had completely shifted into a different person, one I barely recognized. Her late nights continued. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages I wasn't supposed to see, and I felt the weight of betrayal pressing heavily on my chest. I was determined not to let her get away with this. I wanted to feel empowered again. It was time to take control of my life, and I started by focusing on myself. I hit the gym, started taking better care of my appearance, and began to rediscover hobbies I had abandoned in the haze of our marriage. I was learning that I could find joy in my own company, and with every workout, every new song I listened to, I felt a spark reignite within me. Then one night, as I was scrolling through social media, I noticed an event on a local bar's page. DJ Chris was hosting a party. My chest tightened. In that moment, I realized that if I was going to reclaim my life, it was time to confront the source of my pain. I didn't just want to show her I was moving on. I wanted to show her that I was thriving, that I could be the life of the party too. I called up a few friends, Mark and Sarah, who had been supportive through this whole ordeal, and told them my plan. They were more than willing to join. We made arrangements to hit the bar where Chris would be spinning that Friday night. I spent the week preparing, revamping my wardrobe, hitting the gym harder than ever, and even brushing up on some dance moves that I had long neglected. I was ready to make a statement. Friday arrived, and as I stepped into the bar, I was met with a wall of sound. The bass was heavy, and multicolored lights flickered around the room, creating a vibrant atmosphere. I took a deep breath and walked in, confident and determined. I spotted Chris behind the booth, flashing a grin as he dropped the first beat, while the crowd swayed and cheered. As I made my way to the bar, I noticed Katie across the room, her eyes widening as she spotted me. She looked stunning in a tight-fitting dress, but the moment she caught my gaze, her smile faltered. I could see the panic in her eyes as she realized I was here, not as the beaten husband she thought I was, but as a man ready to reclaim his life. I ordered a drink and made my way through the crowd, feeling the energy of the room pulsate around me. I greeted friends, laughed, and danced like I hadn't in years. I felt liberated. The music, the lights, they all blended together, and for the first time in a long while, I felt free. As the night wore on, I spotted Katie again. She was trying to enjoy herself, but I could see her glancing my way more often than not. I decided it was time to confront the situation head-on. I made my way toward her, and as I approached, she looked caught off guard. "Wow, look who decided to show up," I said, trying to keep my tone light, but there was an edge to my voice. She forced a smile, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. "Didn't expect to see you here," she replied, her words laced with uncertainty. I leaned in slightly, emboldened by the drink in my hand. "Well, I figured if you were going to be all over the DJ, I might as well show you how it's done." I turned my gaze toward Chris, who was now in the groove with the crowd. "You know, I can throw a party just as well as he can." Katie's eyes widened, and for a brief moment I thought I saw a flicker of remorse. "It's not like that, you know," she said. Her voice was barely audible over the music. "Then what is it like, Katie? What was it like to share your time, your body with him?" I asked, my voice rising as the bass dropped again. I felt a mix of anger and hurt, but I also felt empowered, like I had finally taken control of the narrative. "What do you want me to say, Alex?" She started but stopped when I held up my hand, cutting her off. "I don't want any more lies. I want the truth. You've made your choices, and now it's time for me to make mine," I said firmly. I could see her floundering for words, and in that moment I knew I was no longer the man she had taken for granted. With that, I turned my back on her, moving back into the crowd, feeling the bass thump beneath my feet. I danced, laughed, and embraced the night, exhilarated by the rush of power. I was no longer just a shadow in my own life. I was at the forefront, carving out a future that was authentically mine. The night wore on, filled with energy and laughter as I mingled with friends and strangers alike. I lost myself in the music, letting go of the weight of betrayal and embracing the freedom that came with living for myself. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. I was ready to confront whatever would come next, and I would not be the victim in my own story. As the night drew to a close, I glanced back at Katie, who was now sitting alone at the bar, nursing a drink and watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. I felt a twinge of something, a mix of pity and determination. She had made her choices, and now I was making mine. Tomorrow would bring more challenges, but for tonight, I was alive. I was the life of the party, and I was ready to dance to my own beat. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. After that fateful night at the bar, I poured my energy into my newfound independence. I continued hitting the gym, expanded my social circle, and even started taking dance lessons. It felt good to invest in myself, to break the chains of the past and rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. But even as I thrived in this new chapter, Katie was still very much a part of my life, lurking in the background like a haunting melody I couldn't shake. Katie's behavior shifted in the aftermath of our confrontation. She tried to act as if nothing was wrong, but I could see her struggle. She would come home late, sometimes with tear-streaked cheeks, but when I confronted her about it, she'd revert to her usual deflection. "I'm just busy with work," she'd say, or "I've been hanging out with friends." I knew there was more to it, and I didn't want to be part of her web of lies anymore. One night, as I sat on the couch scrolling through my phone, an idea struck me. It was time to make my next move, not just for my own sanity, but to finally confront the reality of our situation. I wasn't going to let her continue to manipulate the narrative. I needed closure, and I needed to confront Chris, the man who had played a role in tearing apart my marriage. I found out where Chris would be spinning next, a popular club downtown, and decided to pay him a visit. The thought of confronting the man who had stolen my wife's attention sent a wave of adrenaline through me. I wanted to see him face to face, to hold him accountable for the part he played in my pain. That Saturday night, I got dressed in my best clothes, something sharp and crisp that made me feel confident. As I arrived at the club, I felt the bass reverberating through my body. The energy in the air was electric, and as I walked inside, I could see Chris behind the DJ booth, a smirk plastered on his face as he mixed tracks for the crowd. I took a deep breath and made my way through the throngs of people. I felt a knot in my stomach, but I pushed through. When I was finally close enough to the booth, I leaned in and Chris looked up, his grin faltering as recognition hit him. "Hey man, you're..." "Alex," I interrupted. "We need to talk." He raised an eyebrow, seemingly amused. "About what? The music? You don't look like you're here to complain." "No, I'm not here to complain about the music. I'm here to talk about Katie." The words slipped out with a cold edge, and I could see his demeanor shift. The playful DJ facade faded slightly as he took me more seriously. "Listen, man, it's not what you think," he began, but I cut him off again. "Save it. I've heard all the excuses. I just want to know what you were thinking." I leaned closer, feeling the heat radiating from the crowd. "Did you ever think about what this would do to her, to me?" Chris stayed silent for a moment, his eyes darting around as if searching for someone. "I didn't mean to step on your toes. We were just having fun," he finally replied, a twinge of defensiveness creeping into his voice. "Fun? You call it fun when you're messing with someone's marriage." I felt the anger boil within me, but I forced myself to remain calm. "You knew she was married, right?" Chris shrugged, a nonchalant grin returning. She didn't seem bothered by it. "Look, man, I get it. You're upset. But she's the one who came to me. I didn't chase her down." A wave of frustration washed over me, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing me unravel. "That's the problem, isn't it? You didn't care about the consequences." I took a step back, my mind racing. "You have to understand, you're not just some DJ to her. You're a symbol of everything that's gone wrong in our lives. I want you to know that." He finally looked me in the eye, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of something, regret perhaps. "Man, I didn't mean to hurt you. It just happened. She's fun, you know, it was just a fling." "A fling?" I echoed, the word tasting bitter on my tongue. "You think this is just a fling? You think it's that easy for her, for me?" My voice was rising, and I could feel the heat of the crowd press against me. I wanted to tear him apart, but that wouldn't solve anything. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "You have your fun, but I have a life to rebuild, and I won't let you or anyone else dictate how that goes. I'm taking back control of my narrative, and I suggest you stay out of my way moving forward." Chris nodded, the bravado fading as he seemed to grasp the weight of my words. I get it. I really do. I'll back off. I turned away, feeling the tension in my body start to dissipate. The confrontation hadn't been about getting an apology or expecting him to change. It had been about claiming my space, asserting that I would no longer be the victim in this story. As I walked away from the DJ booth, I felt lighter. Back on the dance floor, I let the music wash over me again, lost in the rhythm of the night. I was still reeling from what had just happened, but I was alive in a way I hadn't felt in months. I was not just dancing for myself. I was reclaiming my identity piece by piece. The healing process had begun, and I was determined to move forward. After that night, I felt a shift within me. I was ready to focus on what lay ahead, on my own happiness. I was carving my path, and I was going to make it count. I had faced my demons and come out stronger, and that was something Katie would have to reckon with sooner or later. I realized that no matter what happened next, I was going to be okay. I was taking the lead in my own life now, and there was no going back. After my confrontation with Chris, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I had faced the man who had contributed to my heartbreak, and now it was time to focus on what truly mattered, my own healing and growth. I shifted my focus away from Katie and toward my own life. I started meeting new people, diving into new experiences, and building a network that felt genuine and supportive. My friends Mark and Sarah became my pillars, always encouraging me to get out there and make the most of my newfound freedom. We went out for drinks, tried out new restaurants, and even went on spontaneous weekend trips. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was living, not just existing. But even with all the joy surrounding me, Katie was always a specter in the back of my mind. She would text occasionally, asking how I was doing, trying to initiate conversations that felt forced and insincere. I would respond, but each interaction left me feeling empty. I could tell she was trying to salvage something, but the connection we had was no longer there. Each time she reached out, I felt a mix of pity and anger, remembering the warmth of our past and the betrayal that had shattered it. Then one evening, as I was out with Mark and Sarah at a new rooftop bar, I saw her again. The city skyline twinkled behind us as I sipped my drink, and just as I turned toward the bar, there she was, Katie, standing a few feet away with a group of friends, her laughter ringing out like a bitter reminder of what I had lost. For a moment I was frozen. My heart raced, and I felt a rush of emotions flooding over me. Anger, sadness, and something more complicated that I didn't want to acknowledge. But then I saw the look on her face when she caught my eye. It was a mix of embarrassment and something unsettling, as if she hadn't expected to see me here, thriving, having fun without her. Mark nudged me, noticing the shift in my demeanor. "You good, man?" he asked, a knowing look in his eyes. "Yeah, just surprised to see her," I replied, trying to shake off the tension. "I didn't think she'd come here." "Want to go say hi?" Sarah suggested, her voice light but laced with a hint of seriousness. I contemplated it for a moment, the gears in my mind turning. I had spent so much time avoiding her, but maybe it was time to confront her again, this time not for answers but for closure. "Let's do it," I said, surprising even myself as I stood up and headed toward her. As I approached, I could feel the atmosphere shift. Katie noticed me, her eyes widening in surprise, and the laughter around her slowly faded. "Alex," she said, almost as if she were testing the word on her tongue. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah, well, life goes on, right?" I said, keeping my tone even. "Looks like you've been busy too." She shifted uncomfortably, her friends casting furtive glances between us. "I have," she said finally, her voice softer. "I'm glad to see you. You look good, thanks, you too." I paused for a moment, feeling the weight of unspoken words between us. "I guess we both have moved on." Katie nodded, looking down at her drink. "I've missed you, you know. I want to talk about everything." "Talk about what exactly?" I replied, feeling the anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Talk about how you shattered everything we built. Talk about how you thought it was fun to betray me." Her eyes flashed with pain, and I could see the defenses crumbling. "I made mistakes, Alex, you know that. I was stupid and selfish, and I regret it every day." "Do you really?" I challenged, crossing my arms. "Because it doesn't seem like it. It looks like you're out having a good time while I'm the one picking up the pieces." I'm trying to move forward, she said, her voice breaking slightly. I can't change the past, but I want to make things right. Right how? I pressed, my heart racing. By pretending everything is okay, by making small talk. You think that's going to fix this? Katie looked at me, her eyes glistening with tears. I just want a chance to explain. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I thought I was just having fun, but then I realized I lost the one person I truly cared about. In that moment, I saw the cracks in her facade. Maybe she was genuinely remorseful, but I wasn't ready to forgive. You don't get to say you care about me after everything, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You made your choices. You had your fun. Now it's my turn to live my life without you. As my words hung in the air, I turned to leave, but then I paused. I hope you find what you're looking for, Katie, but I can't be a part of it anymore. With that, I walked away, feeling a mixture of triumph and sadness. I had confronted her, had taken control of the narrative once again. I was done being the victim, and even if it hurt, I was moving forward, ready to embrace whatever came next. As I rejoined Mark and Sarah, they could see the tension had shifted. How did it go? Mark asked, a supportive look on his face. I think I finally got the closure I needed, I said, feeling lighter despite the emotional weight of the exchange. I don't want to keep dwelling on what was. I'm ready to look ahead. We spent the rest of the night laughing and dancing under the stars, and as I raised my drink in celebration, I realized that I had taken another step toward reclaiming my life. The shadows of the past would still linger, but I was learning to dance with them, to embrace the light of my future. No more holding back. I was ready to face whatever came next, and I wouldn't let anyone, especially not Katie, define my journey. After that night at the rooftop bar, I felt like I had crossed a threshold. Confronting Katie had been cathartic, a validation of my strength and resolve. I knew I had made the right choice by focusing on my own path rather than dwelling on the past. But even though I was moving forward, I still had to navigate the complexities of my feelings and the lingering aftermath of my marriage. In the weeks that followed, I continued to immerse myself in my new life. Work became a place of refuge. I threw myself into projects, gaining recognition for my contributions, and my colleagues began to see me in a new light. I was no longer the quiet guy who faded into the background. I was becoming someone they wanted to know and connect with. But even as my professional life thrived, my personal life was a mixed bag. I started dating again, albeit cautiously. My first dates felt like stepping into the unknown, each encounter a blend of excitement and fear. I was still carrying the emotional scars from my marriage, but I was also eager to see what else was out there. I met Sarah's friend, Lisa, during one of our group outings. She was fun, witty, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. Our chemistry was electric, and it felt refreshing to connect with someone without the baggage of my past weighing us down. Our first date was filled with laughter and shared stories, and I felt a spark of hope that maybe there was life beyond the shadows Katie had cast. However, as I began to explore this new connection, the reality of my past still loomed. I found myself grappling with the fear of vulnerability. What if I let someone in only to be hurt again? Could I trust someone new given my recent experience? These questions plagued my thoughts, but I was determined not to let them paralyze me. One weekend, after a particularly enjoyable date with Lisa, I returned home, feeling lighter than I had in ages. I poured myself a drink and settled onto the couch, reflecting on the evening. Just as I was starting to unwind, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Katie. "Hey, can we talk?" I stared at the screen, my heart racing as conflicting emotions washed over me. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to move on fully without looking back, but another part of me felt a sense of obligation. Maybe there really was something left to discuss. I typed back, "What do you want to talk about?" "Just everything. I know I messed up, but I'd like a chance to explain. Can we meet?" I hesitated, torn. I didn't want to revisit the pain, but I also understood that sometimes closure requires uncomfortable conversations. I ultimately agreed to meet her at a nearby coffee shop the following afternoon. When I arrived at the cafe, I was an anxious bundle of nerves. Images of our past swirled in my mind, our happy moments, the betrayal, the heartache. I spotted Katie sitting at a table, her demeanor visibly different. She seemed vulnerable, a far cry from the confident woman I had once known. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Thanks for meeting me," she replied, her voice softer than I remembered. "I know this is awkward." "Yeah, it is," I admitted. "What's on your mind?" Katie took a deep breath, her eyes searching mine for understanding. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything, for lying, for cheating, for taking you for granted. I never meant for any of this to happen." I stayed silent, letting her continue. "I thought I knew what I wanted and I got lost in the thrill of it all. But losing you made me realize how empty that was. I miss you, Alex, I miss us." Hearing her words stirred a mix of emotions within me, but I had to remind myself of the pain her actions had caused. You can't just come back and expect things to be the same. I've worked hard to rebuild my life after everything you put me through. "I know," she said quickly, her voice rising slightly. "I'm not asking for that. I just want you to know how truly sorry I am. I've done a lot of soul searching since everything happened, and I've realized that I want to be a better person. I want to make amends, even if we can't go back to what we had." I took a moment to absorb her words. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, but part of me was still guarded. "I appreciate that you're being honest, but I've moved on, Katie. I can't just forget what you did." "I don't expect you to," she replied, her voice steady. "But I hope that one day you can forgive me. I don't want to be a ghost in your life anymore. I just want to be honest about how I feel." Her vulnerability was disarming, and for a moment I felt the walls I had built around my heart begin to crack. But I knew I couldn't let myself get swept away in the emotions of the moment. "I need time to think, Katie. I can't promise anything right now." Her face fell, but she nodded, accepting my words. "I understand. Just know that I'll always care about you no matter what." As we parted ways, I felt a mixture of sadness and relief. My heart was heavy, but I also felt like I had closed a chapter in my life. I wasn't ready to forgive her yet, but I was willing to acknowledge what had happened and recognize the lessons I had learned. Back at home, I sank into the couch, replaying our conversation in my mind. I had faced my past, and while the wounds were still fresh, I was learning to accept them as part of my journey. I was ready to embrace the future, whatever it held. The following week, I went on another date with Lisa. We had a great time, exploring a new part of the city and sharing laughs that felt genuine. I was beginning to let go of my fears, slowly opening myself up to the possibility of love again. It was exhilarating and terrifying, but I knew this was the path I needed to take. I realized that I wasn't just moving forward, I was evolving. With every experience, I was learning to dance to my own rhythm, free from the shadows of my past. And as I looked toward the horizon, I felt hopeful about what the future would bring. It was my time to shine, to embrace every moment, and to finally be the life of my own party. As days turned into weeks, the weight of the past gradually lightened, allowing me to fully embrace the promise of the future. My connection with Lisa grew stronger, and I found myself genuinely excited by the prospect of a new relationship. She was everything I needed at that moment: fun, supportive, and uncomplicated. It felt refreshing to be around someone who brought laughter and joy into my life without the baggage of former heartache. We spent weekends exploring new restaurants, attending concerts, and discovering hidden gems throughout the city. Lisa was adventurous, and I loved that about her. She pushed me out of my comfort zone, encouraging me to try new things. One Saturday, she suggested we take a dance class together. The idea both thrilled and terrified me. I had always loved dancing but had never taken formal lessons. Still, I figured if I could face my past, I could certainly tackle a dance floor. The class was a blast, filled with laughter and missteps. I loved seeing Lisa's face light up as we stumbled through the steps, both of us laughing at our lack of coordination. In that moment, I felt a sense of freedom I hadn't experienced in years. I was no longer the man weighed down by betrayal. I was a man ready to embrace life with open arms. One night after a particularly fun dance class, we found ourselves sitting on a bench in the park, catching our breath and enjoying the cool breeze. Lisa looked at me, her eyes sparkling under the moonlight. "You know, I'm really glad we met." she said, her voice soft yet sincere. "You're such a great guy, and I can see how much you've grown." Her words struck a chord within me. I realized how far I had come since my marriage with Katie. I had faced my demons, accepted my past, and was finally learning to love again. "Thank you," I replied, my heart swelling with gratitude. "You've helped me more than you know. I was stuck in a rut, and you've shown me that there's so much more out there." As I gazed at her, I felt a sense of peace. I was no longer haunted by what had been. I was fully present in the moment, appreciating the beauty of what could be. I knew that I still had healing to do, but I was ready for it. I had learned that love could be a complicated dance, but I was willing to learn the steps again. Then one evening, as I was cleaning up after a dinner date, I received another text from Katie. I felt a shiver of anxiety as my heart raced, but I opened it nonetheless. It was short and to the point. "I hope you're doing well. I've been thinking about you and wanted to check in." I took a moment to process this. I had spent so much time focused on moving forward and healing, and here she was, reaching out again. Part of me felt angry, but another part of me remembered our history, the love we once shared. I realized that while I had grown and evolved, I also needed to acknowledge the importance of closure for myself. I decided to respond, but I kept it brief. "Thanks, I am doing well. Hope you are too." It was a simple acknowledgement, nothing more. I didn't need to dive back into emotional turmoil. That chapter of my life had closed. In the days that followed, I focused on nurturing my relationship with Lisa while also continuing to pursue my interests and friendships. I started volunteering at a local community center, using my skills to give back and connect with others. It felt great to contribute positively to my community and reminded me of the importance of building connections beyond romantic relationships. One evening, while sitting with Lisa on my balcony, I felt a wave of contentment wash over me. The city lights twinkled below, and the warmth of her presence filled the air. "You know, I've been thinking," I said, turning toward her, "about how much my life has changed in the past few months. It's incredible how things can turn around when you take a step back and focus on yourself." Lisa smiled, her eyes reflecting the glow of the city. "I'm proud of you. It's not easy to take that leap, especially after everything you went through." "I've learned that life is too short to dwell in the past," I replied. "It's about moving forward, embracing new experiences, and finding joy in every moment." As we sat together, I realized that I was no longer defined by my past. I had transformed my pain into strength, and that made all the difference. I was rediscovering who I was, and I was ready to embrace the future with open arms. With Lisa by my side and a newfound sense of self, I felt optimistic about what lay ahead. The shadows of my past no longer held power over me. I was the life of my own party, dancing to my own rhythm, and ready to face the world with confidence and joy. I had learned valuable lessons about love, trust, and resilience, and I knew that whatever challenges awaited, I would face them head-on. The journey was far from over, but I was excited for the adventures yet to come. It was time to write the next chapter, and this time I would be the author of my own story.